Greetings, Intertubers, and welcome to Art and Sound in Time. I am one of your hosts, Thomas Johansson, and with
And
me,
I am, oh, sorry.
go right ahead, introduce yourself.
Guys, it's a work in progress, y'all. And I am the other host, Catherine Duffy. And some people call me Mandy Cat. So in this podcast, we discuss various goings on and history and theory of music and art and how they are connected in some ways and how they are different in some ways. And we kind of just bounce around between them. So today, we are talking about probably the easiest subject when we think about art and music, portraits of composers.
Yeah, and we're going to look at a wide historical range of portraits and composers from, I don't know, all the way about 1,000 years back up to the present day. At least up until Haydn. I don't know how much further we're going to get beyond
Well, I've
that.
done a few self-portraits, and I'd like to think of myself as a composer sometimes. Please no. Well, let me ask you this, Thomas. Do you have a favorite portrait of a composer?
I absolutely do. And it is one
Tell
of
me
my,
about it.
yeah, it is actually one of my favorite composers, Hildegard von Bingen.
Oh, I love a good Hildegard.
There are a few different portraits of Hildegard, including one that she did herself. Amongst her many talents were music and art, and she also wrote a number of hygiene treatises and several scolding letters to various popes.
That's what I want to do when I get a migraine too.
Yeah, yeah.
How dare you?
Yes, yes, she was this nun in the 11th century who would have ecstatic visions in which she would receive transmissions from heaven and would proceed to write down what these ecstatic visions related to her. And the large chunk of her compositions would come from this process, what have you.
Um, I think that nowadays we would probably, if somebody presented the same symptoms that she did, would say that she probably had migraines,
That's my understanding, yes.
very intense migraines that had hallucinations during the onset, and she probably had auditory hallucinations, which I'm sure we've all had from time to time, and such hallucinations as Fatue, Fatue, and other things that I'm sure that other people remember. Oh, so good. So good. Hildegard.
Oh, yes. Anyhow, my favorite portrait of Hildegard is actually one in which she appears to be receiving some ecstatic vision, and there seems to be a tentacled spawn of Yog Sothoth attaching itself to her face.
Okay, I wasn't going to say anything because I knew it was your favorite portrait of her, but I genuinely want to see what is above that portrait because I feel like it should be just Cthulhu hanging on the door,
Yeah.
and he's just like, "Hey, Hildy, you got a nice brain."
And I think
And
this
she
goes,
did. I mean,
yeah,
she did. She had a great brain. If I were Cthulhu, I would want a piece of that brain for sure.
yeah.
Cthulhu Fatue Fatagan. That's a good favorite.
Hmm.
Mine is a favorite for very, very different reasons. So, my favorite portrait in the whole world, of anyone, but it happens to be of a composer, and it really kind of it gets him, is Ilya Repin's painting of Modest Mussorgsky.
Mm.
There's something so haunting and striking about it. Just in general, I mean, Repin was one of the best. I mean, of course, I'm obviously really biased, but he's just one of my favorite painters of anyone. He's just spectacular, just a master of just using all of the abstract elements of art to just manipulate whoever's looking at his work. And I feel like I don't know, I feel like Mussorgsky was a lot like that too. Like his stuff is just so his music is so manipulative and I just love it. Like I feel like it just, I don't know, wraps itself around my brain and just squeezes it and squeezes it at just the right pace to make me feel whatever. In addition to being a great composer, he was also a very good phrenologist, apparently. Um, he wasn't, but his music does squeeze your brain
You
in
never
just
know
the
with
right
the you never
places.
know with the big five. They all had
Hmm.
various other talents.
That is very true. So, this portrait, Ilya Repin's portrait of Mussorgsky, was painted, I think, it was it was painted in 3 days, if I remember this correctly, um, in 1881, and it was painted, I think, like I don't know exactly, but like 3 or 4 days before he actually died. It was just him at his Mussorgskiest, and and really you can see it, like his eyes are puffed and his nose is red, and you can smell the alcohol on his breath. He's so tortured and brilliant, and his hair is all tousled, and like he has mom hair. Like you can tell that he's been dealing with demons because he has like this demon mom hair. But actually, on Google Art Project, if any of you listeners want to do a little extra homework, on Google Art Project, you can get, we'll put a link in the description or something. Um, you can get really up close to this painting. You can get very, very close to it, and they just got really, really detailed portrait, and it's just there's just something so living about it. Okay, so I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's in the Tetyakov Gallery, I think. But it's in Russia. I'm pretty sure that it's actually stationed opposite of Ivan the Terrible, which is another portrait that Repin did of Ivan the Terrible right after he kind of accidentally killed his son. And my mom went there. I did not. I'm going to someday, but who knows when. I don't really I don't really have any huge urge to go to Russia anytime soon, but in the gallery, like my mom, she lost it. She just thought it was one of the most powerful experiences. And yeah, I just ugh. So yeah, that's my favorite portrait. There are a lot of them that I really enjoy, but that's just a biggie. It's just so special. And I mean, Repin has painted other um composers. I think he did Glinka.
He did. Interesting thing about that one. Glinka had actually passed away before Repin started painting.
Really?
The Glinka painting was done 30 years after Glinka's death. So Repin had to find a lookalike, get him to pose with his music and his empty teacup, and
Wow, that's crazy. So, you know who really liked having his portrait painted? I'll give you a clue. He did not handle his namesake well.
Handel.
Handel had a great handle on his name.
Okay.
Okay, here's this. If you didn't want your painting to be done, what would you do?
um,
'Cause I would hide.
you that's you
You can
would
do this. I
um
know. I know it's tricky, but we can get through this.
it is it Haydn?
Haydn loved having his portrait painted. He he got his portrait painted so much that I am amazed that he got any music written. I mean, I think that about 6 of the paintings that were done of him were actually done while he was composing,
Mm.
but like that would give him 6 paintings or 6 like completed pieces. It's just nuts. Um he had so many, it's just nuts. I can't, but cool thing about Haydn, he lived through kind of the tail end of the Baroque period. And by the time he died, we was just about entering the Romantic period. So when you get to like the early portraits of him, it's rather baroque. You can see that there's a lot of ornamentation. But yes, anyway, um, early on you can see that he has a lot of ornamentation in, for example, the portrait done by Alexander Longhi, he was one of the last descendants of the Venetian school, and he did a portrait of Haydn that he had this just exquisite ornamentation on this beautiful blue Kapellmeister dress or whatever it was called, and it's just amazing. And then um, once he got into the later parts of his life, you could see that there was a little bit more impressionism. There's a portrait that he did by John Hopner in the late 1700s when he was kind of on his way out. And it's so funny. Haydn had written to a friend saying that he had a little bit of problems with English rheumatism. And I don't know what English rheumatism is, and as opposed to like Turkish rheumatism or whatever, but
He picked it up in
um,
England, that's why.
yeah, he's like, oh, this rheumatism feels really English. It's very familiar, not foreign at all. But yeah, it was because he was in Wales. But the portrait that was done of him, his right hand, he's holding a pen in his right hand, and it's just puffy. It's just the puffiest hand that you'll ever see. And I think it was just because of the rheumatism. But yeah, you can kind of see during his life the brushwork gets less, more and more loose and less constrained. And he died pretty much during the very very beginning of the Romantic era, and of art, kind of when Romantic art was starting. So, for example, that's when you'd start seeing the you'd start seeing the subjects of portraits painted in front of um, a landscape that really reflected their temperament. So, for example, there's one painting of Haydn composing, and he's on a battleship or something, and there's like lightning in the background. It's really incredible.
I never really thought of him as a stormy composer, but okay.
It was ridiculous. Actually, that one might have been done posthumously because don't think that I don't think that it's credited, but it's Haydn composing um the Messiah, or not Messiah, duh, but Haydn composing something, and it's just nuts. But yeah, and there are a couple paintings of him that are just outdoors in front of a lake, and he's just composing, as you do when you're out at the lake.
Well, yeah.
But it's really cool how his portrait is kind of his various hundreds and hundreds of portraits, not really hundreds, maybe a dozen or two, really kind of reflect the art styles that were evolving at the time.
So, are there any other composer portraits that really stand out for you?
There is a portrait of Mozart by Johann Georg Edlinger, and uh, oh my gosh, it's just hilarious. He looks bewildered. He looks like um what you would imagine he would look like if he actually were the Mozart from the movie Amadeus. He looks like the character that was portrayed in Amadeus. He just looks insane. Like he looks like the kind of guy who would die from having bad ham.
Or from having to write a requiem for some masked stranger, possibly the
Yes,
ghost of his dad?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like that, if you saw this portrait of Mozart and heard that story, you'd be like, yeah, yeah, okay, that makes sense completely.
You know, who that actually reminds me of is, if you remember the TV show Lost. He looks a bit like
Yeah,
Linus in that picture.
it kind of does. Yeah.
The flared nose and the eyes
Oh,
wide.
yeah. He's just like so, like, be careful. He looks like he could go off at any minute.
Yeah. One of my favorites has always been the famous Beethoven portrait where he's just scowling over some piece of music that he's writing and his hair is all over the place. And I just imagine that with impact font saying, "This is my happy face."
This is my happy face. Let's see. Oh, there's a Pablo Picasso did a portrait of Igor Stravinsky. I don't know if you ever did this. This was something that I had to copy this in some art class. Let me see if I can get it up here.
Oh, yes, I remember this one now.
Yeah, I had to copy this upside down in a drawing class, and I turned my drawing right side up, and I was like, "Oh, that looks terrible." And then I looked, and then I turned Picasso's drawing upside down, and I'm like, "Actually, that's about right." Yeah, it's just a drawing of him in a chair. I don't know. I have a soft spot for Picasso. I really enjoy him. He evolved so much and he was always experimenting and he did quite a bit for art.
That said,
Yeah, that said, like that drawing, I feel like he started so strong. Like I feel like he started at the bottom and he's like, okay, getting the folds of the trousers in and like, okay, this is what the chair looked like. And then like he realized once he got to the shoulders that he didn't have enough room for the head. So he's like, all right, well, and then like the head ends up being like half the size of his hands. Disclaimer, I have nothing against Picasso. I love him to bits, but that portrait just cracks me up. I just think that's just a hoot. For somebody who was so spectacular at, and I mean, he could do anatomy. He knew anatomy. I think he did it on purpose. Like I'm not saying that it's accidental. I'm just saying that it's goofy.
yeah. Well, Stravinsky at that stage in his career was kind of a goofy guy to begin with, so.
Maybe Stravinsky appeared to have a very, very, very big head, and maybe Picasso was trying to overcompensate, and he just overcompensated a little too much.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah. Trying to bring him back down to size. And I want to see if I can find it. There's I think Schoenberg did a self portrait. It's just fantastic, in my opinion.
Sorry, I didn't mean to give that reaction.
It's understandable. Everyone has that reaction to Schoenberg at one point or another.
He So, okay, when I was in music history, I think we had three or four composers to choose from to do a research paper, and I did my research paper on Schoenberg, and um, you know, his wife left her then husband for him, and I don't know if they got married. Anyway, she left her husband so that she could be with Schoenberg, and then the man that she left behind, her husband or ex-husband, killed himself. And what
Schoenberg,
happened?
yeah, Schoenberg's first wife left Schoenberg for the guy who was teaching Schoenberg how to paint. Had this affair, and then Schoenberg begged and pleaded and got her to return, at which point the painter took his life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
We should completely do that backwards because that's a really cool story. Not backwards. I mean, we should say that again and pretend like I didn't have no idea what was going on. But Um, so yeah, so I guess what I mean to say is in the research paper I said, well, that's I probably got the story right, but it's just been such a long time. But yeah, so basically she left her lover for Schoenberg, and then her lover, who was a painter, I didn't know that, killed himself. And I remember distinctly while writing my paper in brackets, I said, or in parentheses, I said, which was an appropriate response for a person who lost their lover to Schoenberg. Like, I would feel pretty bad too if somebody left me for him. Ooh, the blue one?
I believe so, yeah.
Oh, that's actually really cool. Darn it. It has kind of an Alice Neal look to it. Sorry, Alice Neal. Maybe sorry, Schoenberg. I actually really like that. Maybe he was right. Maybe his music is really good and was just poorly played. Maybe he was a genius this whole time and I just didn't give him credit. I'm gonna go ahead and say that might not be the case.
One of my favorite Schoenberg quotes, and he delivered this later on in his life, he said, "There are still many masterpieces to be written in the key of C." So even though he had developed this whole dodecaphonic system of making music using every note available and using those notes without really having any key center or sense of home,
Mm-hmm.
he still had this great affection for good old-fashioned music and really encouraged his students to write that kind of music.
I appreciate that. I like that. That's a great sentiment. There's still many masterpieces to be written in C.
Well, going way back into the past again, I was just thrilled when I saw the portrait of Guillaume de Machaut, who is known to history as the first person to actually attach his name to a completed mass cycle, the Messe de Notre Dame. And his portrait is just, I find this so amusing because his neck is craned forward and he has this bemused look on his face.
Oh my, that doesn't look comfortable at all.
No, no.
I was actually just thinking, I can't believe I forgot this, but Josquin des Prez,
Yeah.
Josquin des Prez, I don't, yeah, his hat, man,
That is an epic hat.
like,
I don't use the word
if you
epic
have,
loosely, but that is an epic hat.
really, that is an epic, like, Homer would be proud of that hat, it is that epic. If, dear listeners, if you have only 2 minutes on the internet today and you need to look up one portrait of any composer, please find the one of Josquin des Prez because his hat is the stuff that dream hats are made out of.
Yes,
Pretty special stuff.
it is. What else is remarkable is Monteverdi's mustache.
Monteverdi's mustache. Now we're just making fun of people. I'm kind of okay with it.
Well, it really is a great mustache. I mean,
Ooh, that's nice. He's got kind of like a. I like the part where he has the mutton chops, but they're not like connected to the rest of his head.
yeah.
So it's just like this phantom mustache. Also, Hector Berlioz.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of great hairstyles in composer history, which really this should have all been about that this
Oh,
whole
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Berlioz's hair, by Emile Signol, I think. But like his hair takes up about as much space as the rest of his head
Yes.
combined. Infinite hair. Hair to infinity. As in, you could barely you'd see his face through all that hair. Oh,
It hurts.
sorry. Seriously, we're just going to end up talking about a whole bunch of composers' hair, but Edward Elgar.
Mm-hmm.
Edward Elgar's mustache is just so nice. It got more and more Nietzschean as he got older, and just huge. That's a, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's a mustache only an existentialist could love. It was like he had Tennyson's beard except under his nose. Erik Satie, didn't he have a nice beard? Or
He had a
oh yeah, he had a mustache with
he,
twirly bits.
yeah, he had a very French fin de siècle appearance, which is very suiting
Mm-hmm.
because that's the time and place when he was alive.
He
My favorite,
preferred music without sauerkraut, that's for sure.
yeah, my
He
favorite
did actually chant that.
my favorite portrait of him is one in which he's wearing glasses, and the angle at which his face is to the camera causes the light to reflect off of the glasses. So instead of eyes, you just see these bright discs over his face.
Ooh, I like that. My favorite portrait of him is actually by a woman, Suzanne Valadon, and he has just a very twirly mustache, and really, as a painter, I love different skin tones, and she gets really beautiful olivey colors next to juxtaposed with pink and peach, and oh
Hmm.
yeah, you can really see it's a very modern portrait. You can see I love how different, for example, the portrait of Eric Satie is from um, Hildegard, I suppose,
Yes.
or anyone else. You know, it's funny, after seeing all of these bearded composers, seeing Richard Wagner
Oh yeah.
just having just a chin, just like a regular chin and no facial hair, it's actually quite off-putting. Like he looks like he has too much skin. Like cover that up.
To me,
Get a
he
beard.
looks like a country doctor. I mean, he looks like he belongs in some western.
Uh-huh. He really does, yeah. Oh man. Wagner's portrait, oddly enough, was done by Renoir.
Hmm.
Considering Wagner's nationalistic sentiments, I'm surprised that he picked a French person. Um, I mean, granted, it was Renoir, but I'm surprised that he picked a French person to paint his portrait.
Well, the thing you have to understand about Wagner is he hated everyone.
That's a good point.
Wagner could only love Wagner, and
Mhm.
since he really wasn't that great of a painter and might have had enough self-awareness to recognize this about himself, he had to rely on someone to paint him. So,
And Cosimo was too feminine to do it.
yes.
You can't get a woman to paint a portrait. What is this, the future? Yeah, Wagner. Yeah, 1882. His portrait is in the Musée d'Orsay in France.
Hmm.
In case you were wondering where the Musée d'Orsay is. Musée d'Orsay. I can't. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every French person I've ever loved. There's a really cool portrait of Strauss done by Hans Schleissmann
Ricard?
in, yes, in 1918. And it's more or less just a silhouette of him, but it just looks really cool. I am a fan. I do love a good silhouette. There are actually two of them. There's one by Hans Schleissmann and one from, ooh, gonna butcher this, Theo Zasch, something like 1922.
So yes, I was about to say there's a great, speaking of silhouettes, there's a great silhouette of Bruckner and Wagner together. Two
Really?
great late Romantic composers, and Wagner is actually offering Bruckner a pinch of snuff from his snuff box.
Oh my gosh, who's the chubby one?
Yeah, Bruckner's the chubby one with the really big nose.
Oh, Brooker's so chubby. He had like a Haydn nose.
Yeah.
Haydn's nose, incidentally, also not very good at hiding. So mean. You guys, I promise I'm a very nice person. I'm not shallow. It's just we're talking about paintings of these people, and I just love how brutally honest some of them are. All right. I think we've officially talked about many, many, many composers at this point.
Yeah, we kind of have.
Is it time to kind of wrap it up?
Probably.
Well, I think that we've established that a lot of painters painted a lot of composers.
If nothing else, we have established that.
I would say that these are definitely my personal highlights of composers being painted. Um, there are so many that there's no possible way that we could get to them all, but please check them out. They're all amazing. Um, and there are a lot more, but those are probably our favorites, I think.
Hmm.
So thank you for joining us in our inaugural podcast of Art and Sound in Time.
And we promise these will get better as we go along.
They pretty much have to. The moral of the story, folks, is that composers like to be painted. So if you know a composer, just ask him to sit for you. I'm sure they'll be happy to do it. But there you have it. Portraits of composers in music history and also art history. Kind of.
All right, thank you, intertubers. Now on to other intertube locations. Disperse.
It's time to take your intertubing elsewhere. I think we might need to work on our sign off. Until next time, keep looking places.
By the way, we're both Minnesotans, and Minnesotans are incapable of saying goodbye. We just don't know how that works.
We don't know how. We're just like, oh, so I'll see you. Are you gonna be at the?
You want another
It
cup
just
of
keeps.
coffee before you go?
Oh, I probably shouldn't, but you know what? Yeah, maybe just one more. All right. Sign off pending. We'll find a way to say goodbye at some point.
Yes.
All right, I'm calling it. I'm calling it.
Okay, yeah, I'm hitting
We're
the
done.
stop button.
All right,
There.
hitting stop now.